Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found us. This is your go-to space for real, honest, and practical relationship advice that actually works in the real world. We're not about toxic positivity or one-size-fits-all solutions here. We're about diving deep into what makes relationships thrive, struggle, and everything in between. Before we jump into today's topic, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on the relationship building tips and insights we share every week. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what we have coming up. Today, we're tackling something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but it's absolutely crucial if you want to build a deep, lasting, and truly intimate relationship. We're talking about vulnerability. Specifically, why sharing your fears with your partner actually makes you stronger, not weaker. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. If I show my fears, my partner will think I'm weak. They'll lose respect for me. They'll see me differently. And I get it. We've been conditioned, especially many men in our society, to believe that showing emotion is a sign of weakness, that being vulnerable means you're not strong enough to handle life on your own, that admitting you're scared or uncertain somehow diminishes your value as a partner. But here's the truth that I've seen play out in countless relationships over my years as a therapist and coach. The opposite is actually true. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. And sharing your fears doesn't make you less attractive to your partner. It creates the foundation for genuine intimacy that most couples only dream about. So today, I'm breaking down 5 powerful reasons why opening up about your fears transforms your relationship and makes both you and your partnership stronger. Stick with me until the end because I'm going to share some practical strategies for how to start being more vulnerable, even if it feels terrifying right now. Let's dive in. Reason 1. Vulnerability creates authentic connection. The first reason why sharing your fears makes you stronger is this. Vulnerability creates authentic connection, and authentic connection is the foundation of every great relationship. Think about your closest friendships for a moment. The people you feel most connected to. When did those relationships deepen? I'm willing to bet it wasn't during surface-level conversations about the weather or what you watched on Netflix. Those bonds grew stronger when someone opened up about something real, when someone shared a struggle, admitted a mistake, or revealed something they were genuinely worried about. The same principle applies to romantic relationships, but it's even more critical. Your partner isn't just your friend. They're the person you're building a life with. And you can't build a life with someone who only knows the highlight, real version of you. When you share your fears with your partner, you're essentially saying, this is the real me, not the version I think you want to see, not the polished image I present to the world, but the actual person behind the mask. And that invitation for your partner to see you fully, that's intimacy. That's what separates a good relationship from a great one. Let me give you a real example. I worked with a couple, let's call them Marcus and Trina. Marcus came from a family where showing emotion was seen as weak. His father taught him to man up and never let anyone see you sweat. So for the first 3 years of their relationship, Marcus presented himself as the guy who had it all together. He never complained, never showed stress, never admitted when he was struggling. On the surface, everything looked fine, but Trina felt like she was living with a stranger. She knew the facts about Marcus's life, but she didn't know Marcus. She didn't know what kept him up at night, what scared him, what made him feel vulnerable. And without that knowledge, she couldn't truly connect with him. The breakthrough came when Marcus lost his job unexpectedly. For the first time, he couldn't hide his fear. He broke down in front of Trina and admitted he was terrified about their finances, about his worth as a provider, about whether he was enough for her. And you know what happened. Trina didn't lose respect for him. She fell more in love with him because for the first time, she was seeing the real Marcus, the human Marcus, the Marcus who felt things deeply and cared so much about their relationship that losing his job shook him to his core. That moment of vulnerability didn't weaken their relationship. It saved it. When you share your fears, you give your partner access to your inner world. You let them see not just what you do, but who you are. And that authentic connection, that's what makes relationships resilient. Because when your partner knows the real you, fears and all, you don't have to waste energy pretending. You can just be. Reason 2, it builds trust and emotional safety. The second reason sharing your fears makes you stronger is that it builds trust and creates emotional safety in your relationship. And trust, my friends, is the currency of intimacy. Here's what most people get wrong about trust. They think trust is just about fidelity. about not cheating or lying about the big things. But trust goes so much deeper than that. Real trust is emotional trust. It's the belief that you can share your deepest self with your partner and they won't use it against you, mock you, or abandon you because of it. When you share a fear with your partner and they respond with compassion, understanding, and support, something powerful happens. You learn that this person is safe, that this relationship is a space where you don't have to be perfect, where you can bring your struggles and your doubts and your anxieties, and you'll be met with love, not judgment. And here's the beautiful reciprocal effect. When you show vulnerability first, you give your partner permission to do the same. You're essentially saying, I trust you with this, and you can trust me too. This creates what psychologists call a secure attachment, a relationship where both partners feel safe enough to be fully themselves. Let me break this down even further. Every time you're vulnerable with your partner and they respond positively, you're making what relationship researcher Dr. John Gottman calls a bid for connection. And when your partner responds to that bid with attention and care rather than turning away or turning against you, you're building what Gottman calls an emotional bank account. Think of it like this. Every moment of vulnerability that's met with compassion is a deposit into your relationship's emotional bank account. Over time, those deposits add up. They create a reserve of trust and goodwill that you can draw on during harder times. When conflicts arise or life gets stressful, that reservoir of trust becomes your safety net. I remember working with a client named David who was convinced that sharing his fear about his father's declining health would burden his wife. He thought being strong meant handling it alone. But the more he withdrew to protect her, the more disconnected she felt. She started wondering if he even needed her, if their marriage mattered to him at all. When David finally opened up about his fear of losing his father and his grief about their complicated relationship, everything shifted. His wife didn't feel burdened. She felt honored that he trusted her enough to share something so painful. And from that point forward, they both felt safer being vulnerable because they had proven to each other that their relationship could hold hard emotions. The irony is that trying to appear strong by hiding your fears actually weakens the relationship. It creates distance. It sends the message that you don't need your partner, which can make them feel unnecessary or excluded from the most important parts of your life. But when you share your fears, you're saying, I need you. I value your support. You matter to me. And that builds trust faster than almost anything else. Reason 3, vulnerability demonstrates emotional courage and strength. Now let's talk about reason number 3, and this is where we really flip the script on what strength means. Sharing your fears actually demonstrates emotional courage, which is the truest form of strength. Our culture has it backwards. We think strength means having no weaknesses, no doubts, no fears. We admire the stoic hero who never flinches, never cries, never admits they're struggling. But that's not strength. That's armor. And armor is heavy. It's exhausting to wear all the time. Eventually, it suffocates you. Real strength isn't the absence of fear. Real strength is feeling the fear and being brave enough to share it anyway. Think about it. Which takes more courage, pretending everything's fine when you're falling apart inside, or admitting to someone you love that you're scared? Which requires more emotional strength, building walls around your heart, or tearing them down and letting someone in? Vulnerability is risk. When you share a fear, you're risking rejection, you're risking judgment, you're risking that your partner might not respond the way you hope. But taking that risk? That's courage. That's strength. I want you to consider some of the bravest people you know, the ones you truly admire. Chances are, what you admire about them isn't that they never struggle. It's how they handle struggle. It's their willingness to be honest about their challenges. It's their refusal to pretend they have it all figured out. That authenticity is magnetic because it's rare, and it's rare because it requires tremendous courage. In relationships, this kind of emotional courage creates a powerful dynamic. When your partner sees you willing to be vulnerable despite your fear of judgment, they see your strength. They see someone who values the relationship enough to risk being fully seen. They see someone who isn't just playing a role, but is genuinely invested in creating something real. Let me share another story. I coached a woman named Lisa who was terrified of confrontation. She came from a family where any expression of negative emotion led to explosive fights, so she learned to keep everything inside. In her marriage, whenever she felt hurt or scared about something, she would smile and say everything was fine. Her husband, Jordan, started to feel like he was living with someone who had no depth. He didn't see Lisa as strong for hiding her feelings. He saw her as distant. The relationship felt shallow because he only ever got one-note responses from her. The turning point came when Lisa gathered the courage to tell Jordan about her fear of conflict and why she always shut down. She shared how her childhood experiences made her afraid that expressing fear or hurt would blow up their marriage. That conversation was terrifying for her. Her hands shook, her voice cracked. But you know what Jordan said? He said, "This is the bravest thing you've ever done, and I feel closer to you right now than I have in months." By sharing her fear, Lisa didn't become weaker in Jordan's eyes. She became more real, more human, more lovable, because he could finally see her struggling with something and choosing to trust him with it. That's strength. When you show vulnerability, you're also modeling emotional intelligence and maturity. You're showing that you understand emotions aren't the enemy, they're information. Fear is your internal system trying to protect you from perceived threats. Acknowledging fear doesn't mean you're controlled by it. It means you're aware enough to recognize it and secure enough to share it. Partners are attracted to emotional strength, not emotional numbness. They want someone who can feel deeply and still function, who can acknowledge fear and still move forward, who can be honest about struggles while working to overcome them. That's the kind of strength that sustains relationships through decades, not just months. Reason 4, it allows your partner to support you and strengthens their role. Reason number 4 is something people often overlook. When you share your fears, you give your partner the opportunity to support you, which actually strengthens their role in your life and deepens their investment in the relationship. Here's a truth about human psychology. People feel more connected to those they help. When someone supports us through a difficult time, we feel gratitude. But when we support someone through their difficult time, we feel attachment. We feel needed. We feel valuable. We feel like we matter. By keeping your fears to yourself, you're actually denying your partner the opportunity to show up for you. You're preventing them from fulfilling one of the core purposes of a relationship, being there for each other when life gets hard. Think about this from your partner's perspective. They entered into a relationship with you because they care about you. They want to be part of your life, the good parts and the challenging parts. When you hide your fears and struggles, you're essentially saying, "I don't trust you to handle this," or "I don't need you for this." Even if that's not your intention, that's the message they receive. And over time, that creates a painful dynamic where your partner feels like a spectator in your life rather than a participant. They're there for the easy stuff, the date nights, the vacations, the celebrations. But when things get real, you shut them out. That doesn't feel like partnership. It feels like rejection. I worked with a couple where the husband, James, prided himself on being self-sufficient. He handled all his stress, his work problems, his health scares, everything, without ever leaning on his wife, Michelle. He thought he was being considerate, sparing her from his burdens. But Michelle felt increasingly irrelevant. She started to wonder what she was even there for if James didn't need her. The relationship was deteriorating, and James couldn't understand why. He was doing everything right, providing, staying faithful, spending time with her. But he wasn't letting her in. He wasn't sharing his fears, which meant she had no opportunity to support him, which meant she couldn't feel needed or valuable in the relationship. When we unpacked this in therapy, James realized his self-sufficiency wasn't protecting Michelle. It was pushing her away. He started small, sharing a fear about a medical test he had coming up. Michelle's entire demeanor changed. She researched the procedure, went with him to the appointment, held his hand in the waiting room. And afterward, she told him, "I feel like I finally got to be your wife today, not just your roommate." Your partner wants to be your safe space. They want to be the person you turn to when you're scared, uncertain, or struggling. That's not a burden for them, it's an honor. It makes them feel central to your life, not peripheral. And here's the bonus. When you allow your partner to support you through your fears, you're also building their confidence in the relationship. They get to see that they can handle your hard moments. They get to prove to themselves and to you that they're capable of showing up when it matters. That builds their investment in the relationship because they've put emotional labor into it. They've contributed to your well-being, which makes them more committed to the partnership's success. This creates a beautiful cycle. You share a fear, they support you, you feel closer to them, they feel needed and valued, the relationship deepens, which makes it safer to share the next fear, and so on. It's a positive feedback loop that strengthens both individuals and the relationship as a whole. Reason number 5. Vulnerability breaks the cycle of shame and isolation. The fifth and final reason why sharing your fears makes you stronger is this. Vulnerability breaks the cycle of shame and isolation that keeps so many people trapped in unhealthy patterns. Shame thrives in secrecy. It grows in the dark, in the places we won't let anyone see. Shame tells us, if they really knew what I was afraid of, if they really knew what I struggled with, they wouldn't love me anymore. So we hide, we isolate, we carry our fears alone, and that isolation makes the fears bigger, scarier, and more overwhelming than they actually are. But here's what happens when you bring fear into the light by sharing it with your partner. Shame loses its power. Because the story shame tells, that you're unlovable if people see your struggles, gets proven wrong. When you share a fear and your partner responds with love and acceptance, the shame narrative crumbles. Researcher and author Brené Brown has spent decades studying shame and vulnerability. One of her key findings is that shame cannot survive being spoken. The moment you voice what you're ashamed of or afraid of to someone who responds with empathy, shame begins to dissolve. It can't maintain its grip on you when you're no longer hiding. In relationships, unspoken fears create distance. They create what I call secret suffering. You might be lying next to your partner every night, but if you're carrying fears you won't share, you're alone in the ways that matter most. That loneliness within a relationship is one of the most painful experiences people describe. I remember a client, Sarah, who was terrified that her past, a previous marriage that ended badly, and some financial mistakes she'd made, would make her current partner see her as damaged or foolish. So she never talked about it. She never shared her fear that history might repeat itself or her anxiety about money. She kept it all locked away, and the shame of it ate at her. Her partner, Alex, could sense something was wrong but didn't know what. Sarah seemed distant, anxious for no apparent reason, and unwilling to discuss certain topics. Alex started to feel shut out and worried that Sarah didn't trust him. When Sarah finally found the courage to share her fears about her past, about money, about not being good enough, Alex's response was immediate and clear. I already knew your past wasn't perfect, nobody's is, but I chose you knowing you're human. These fears you've been carrying alone, we can carry them together. That moment changed everything for Sarah. The shame that had been controlling her behavior for months evaporated. That isolation ended, and she realized that the fear of judgment was far worse than actual judgment, because there was no judgment, just understanding. When you share your fears within a loving relationship, you're also modeling healthy emotional processing. You're showing that fears don't have to be permanent residents in your head. They can be acknowledged, examined, and often diminished through connection and support. This is crucial because many of our fears are actually stories we tell ourselves, and sometimes just speaking them aloud reveals how distorted or exaggerated they've become. Your partner can offer perspective you can't see when you're trapped in your own head. They can remind you of your strengths when fear makes you forget them. They can help you problem solve when fear makes you feel helpless. But they can only do these things if you let them in. Breaking the cycle of shame and isolation doesn't just make your relationship stronger, it makes you healthier as an individual. Carrying fears alone takes a toll on your mental health, your physical health, and your overall well-being. Studies show that people in relationships where they can be vulnerable have lower stress levels, better immune function, and greater life satisfaction than those who feel they must hide their true selves. When you share your fears, you're not just strengthening your relationship, you're reclaiming your emotional freedom, you're refusing to let shame dictate how you show up in your most important relationship. And that refusal? That's power. Practical strategies for starting to share your fears. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Okay, I get it. Vulnerability is important. But how do I actually start? I've been holding everything in for so long, where do I even begin? Here are some practical strategies to help you start sharing your fears, even if it feels uncomfortable. Start small. You don't have to dive into your deepest, darkest fear on day one. Start with something lower stakes. Share a small worry or concern and see how your partner responds. Build your vulnerability muscles gradually. Use I feel statements. Instead of making accusations or demands, frame your fears with I feel statements. I feel scared when, or I'm worried that. This keeps things focused on your experience rather than blaming your partner. Pick the right time. Don't try to have a vulnerable conversation when either of you is stressed, tired, or distracted. Choose a calm moment when you can. Both be fully present. Be specific. Instead of vague statements like, I'm just stressed, be specific about what you're afraid of. I'm afraid that if I don't get this promotion, you'll see me as a failure is much more vulnerable and actionable than just saying you're worried about work. Ask for what you need. After sharing a fear, let your partner know what kind of support would be helpful. Do you need advice? Just someone to listen? Reassurance? Help your partner know how to show up for you. Remember, vulnerability is a practice, not a personality trait. It's something you build over time, conversation by conversation, shared fear by shared fear. So there you have it. 5 powerful reasons why sharing your fears with your partner makes you stronger, not weaker. Let's recap. 1. Vulnerability creates authentic connection, the foundation of intimacy. 2. It builds trust and emotional safety in your relationship. 3. It demonstrates emotional courage, which is the truest form of strength. 4. It allows your partner to support you and strengthens their role in your life. 5. It breaks the cycle of shame and isolation that keeps you trapped. The relationships that last aren't the ones where people pretend to be perfect. They're the ones where people feel safe being imperfect together, where fears can be shared without judgment, where vulnerability is met with compassion. That's the kind of relationship worth building, and it starts with the courage to open up. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know. What's one fear you've been hesitant to share with your partner? Or if you've already taken that step, how did it go? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their own courage. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to check out our other relationship tips and advice on the channel. We've got tons of content on communication, conflict resolution, intimacy, and so much more that can help you build the relationship you've always wanted. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you never miss new content. I'm here every day with practical, real-world relationship advice that actually works. Remember, vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the bridge to the kind of love that lasts. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.